The most powerful ideas begin with one. One person, one thought, one desire for change. But for an idea to come to life, it must be shared, developed, implemented. We are all drawn to compelling ideas. We feel a spark. We connect. We want to be part of something bigger. The vision excites us. It brings us together. And when we collaborate, momentum builds. We grow stronger. Our diversity broadens our perspective, driving deeper thought, creating better solutions. Side by side, face to face. When we meet, energy and excitement build. You can actually feel the power in the room, together, working with a common purpose. United as one, sharing a journey, an experience, unleashing human potential. We meet, create, educate, innovate. It's you, it's us. Together, we can change the world.
Thank you all very much for being here today, taking time out of your busy schedules to support GMID. I'm Chris Colbert. I'm president-elect for PCMA Southeast. Yes, we meet. Everyone in this room actually is meeting together for this meeting, has a source of income because of meetings. Global Meetings Industry Day, I'm going to have to pick it up. It's too far away. I can't read it. Global Meetings Industry Day is an opportunity to make known the real impact meetings have on businesses, economies, and communities, and that is part of the reason you are in this room today. Meeting professionals, organizations, associations, chapters, corporations, destinations, partners, and other supporters are holding events all around the world to support this International Day of Advocacy. Events include rallies, press conferences, speaking panels like the one we're going to have today, educational events, award presentation, proclamations, and more. And by the way, PSAV and MPI, among many others, are spotlighting GMID on a national level today. PCMA Southeast is also hosting a day-long event in Orlando for our strong member base in that area. In 2018, there were 206 registered GMID events globally, and in 2019, there will be even more by the time this day is finished, and it is already Friday in many parts of the world. The meetings industry contributes more to the U.S. national GDP than air transportation, motion pictures, sound recordings, performing arts, and spectator sport industries. It's an economic engine, creating hundreds of thousands of jobs, generating billions of dollars in revenue, and supporting communities across the country. The global economic impact our industry has is valued at $2.53 trillion. That will make your head explode. Yes, what we do is very important. We meet today as a community of meeting professionals from all walks to not only acknowledge GMID with our colleagues around the world, but to also network, meet new friends, and see longtime acquaintances. Today, the proceeds of this meeting will benefit Covenant House Atlanta. Abby Stokes is with Covenant House, and she is here today to tell you about the mission of Covenant House and the role that they play with stopping human trafficking. That subject is very mean, ugly, and raw, but it's a reality of our world. And we will hear more about this later, but now I would like to welcome Abby Stokes to come up and say a few words. Thank you.
Hi. I'll admit, he threw me off a little. He said my name, I started walking up, and then he went, we'll hear more about it later, and I was like, never mind. But now I'm up here. Hi, my name's Abby Stokes. I work for Covenant House, Georgia. It is a part of a very large Covenant House International that is in 32 cities across the Americas. We serve a kind of a unique population. Basically, we serve homeless individuals that are 18 to 24 years old. So a lot of homeless shelters serve a much larger age range, or the entire age range, right? But we serve a very big niche that is much larger than you would think. There was a study done a couple of years ago about homeless youth in that age range in the city of Atlanta, so within the city perimeter. And they found that on any given night, there's actually 3,300 homeless youth, 18 to 24, on the street somewhere, which is a much higher number than you might anticipate. It doesn't include Marietta, it doesn't include Smyrna or Roswell, and I'm naming things in that direction because that's where I grew up. But just that many really kids are on the street because at some point in time, their life changed paths to where most of ours took us, where they ended up somewhere that we could never even fathom. And so about 50 years ago, it was actually realized that they were on the streets somewhere, but they had a very specific point where something broke off. For a lot of homeless shelters, the reason someone who's 20 is homeless is very different than someone who's 65. And that person who's 65 may have been homeless since they were 18 as well. But we're able to really kind of pinpoint certain things, making sure they finish high school, helping them get their GED, starting them on those basic interview, job skills, classes like that can help do a corrective action and correct course before they make it to being 40 and 45 and 50 and having this chronic span of homelessness. A lot of people ask us where our youth come from, how did they end up being homeless? And my favorite saying is the least interesting thing about the youth we serve is the fact that they're currently experiencing homelessness. Our youth want to be actors, they want to be entrepreneurs, they do have family, they don't, they have incredible friends, they have incredible personalities and drives to do crazy things. We had a youth last year who wanted to see the country, so she got her truck driver's license and has been across the country several times. They have all these incredible, very varied backgrounds that want to get there, but they do have very similar, common themes that led them there. Every youth story is different, but when you kind of line them all up, there's a few things that you see recurring. A lot of our youth were in foster care, and when foster care finished, they just never made a great connection or were never placed with a great connection that could help them past that point. And so they're with us. Or they were actually trafficked in some way, shape, or form. For our population and the youth that we serve, we find that actually 1 in 4 have been trafficked in some way, shape, or form. And that could be labor, it could be sex, anything like that. But 1 in 4 have actually been trafficked of the youth that are currently with us. And that doesn't even count the youth that come and we decide that they are still in too immediate of a danger of that trafficker and connect them with a safe house. That doesn't even count that population that come in and we connect them with somewhere that's a little more off the grid than we are. Because if you Google us, you'll find our address. If you didn't know, that's the definition of a safe house is you can't Google it and find their address. But we have a multitude of services that we offer, from job placement, educational training, mental health, physical help with a partnership with community advanced practice nurses. We have a crisis shelter that houses 50 beds and is about to expand to house a lot more. We have a long-term program that has 24 beds on our campus and another 15 throughout the city with landlords that are really nice and give us reduced rent. And that's also about to almost double in size over the next 2 years. We have a drop-in center for youth that don't want to stay with us. I wouldn't want to stay with some random strangers in a room with some bunk beds with other people. And so we have a drop-in center for those youth that aren't quite ready for that step and but still want to access mental health services, the job placement services, need help filling out a college application, things like that. Last May, we saw 16 of our youth be accepted into college, and many of them went. One is a neuroscience major at Emory. And they come to us with a varied background. Some haven't finished 3rd grade, some are finishing high school with a 4.0, but they identified as part of the LGBTQ community and were told they couldn't stay anymore. It's also a large population of our youth. Some of our youth want to be actors and actresses and are actually ridiculously talented, but they moved to Atlanta thinking that that would be an easy jump start and quickly realized it was not. So a lot of our youth have come to Atlanta because there are jobs here, but there aren't jobs on that starting level for many of them that make enough to pay their rent, and they ended up homeless and in debt, or with 2 semesters worth of college in debt and no way to pay it back and no way to move forward. And so, long story short, that's kind of where Covenant House steps in and fixes that, or attempts to bridge that gap and offer services to those that want it. So out of the 3,300 homeless youth in Atlanta, we served 15,508 was the official recorded in a computer somewhere count, which means it was probably a lot more than that. So we are serving currently about half on track. The goal is to serve all. And part of what you're contributing to today with the raffle is helping us reach that goal, is helping us be able to fund one more mental health counselor so they can meet with that many more youth every day, be able to fund one more job specialist. If you're curious, we have one education specialist, one job specialist, and 3 AmeriCorps members for that team. So funding for certain things like that often seems like no one wants to fund a staff member. But funding that staff member for our campus literally doubles what we're able to do for our youth and doubles the amount of youth we can serve in those programs. And so donating at the raffle here is such a huge part of that, and it seems like such a little thing, but it goes so incredibly far. And I consistently hear from our youth that they can't believe that someone would actually donate to something for someone they don't know. An adult would donate, and adults that have consistently looked straight past them or said no or kicked them out of their homes. And that an adult would care enough to do something, including bringing the donations that I get to pack into my car in a little while, which in Covenant House runs entirely on donations, down to the food we feed our youth and the clothing we provide, the toiletries we provide, the apartment furniture we provide when they are at the point of their first apartment. We're not sending anybody anywhere without a bed. But long story short, and I don't know how to wrap this up, but thank you so much for donating and for participating in the raffle and donating your things. Chris has my email if you would like to find out more. I am one of the volunteer coordinators and I coordinate donations. So if you'd like to get involved, we have some awesome volunteer opportunities as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Abby. Thank you, Abby. Again, as she mentioned about the raffle, but all of the proceeds from today are going to Covenant House, including the raffle. So thank you all again for being here to support that. Well, we are very proud to have sponsors who help make events like this possible, and we want to thank our venue sponsor, Renaissance Waverly and Marriott, and our supplier sponsor, the idyllic and beautiful Jekyll Island on Georgia's coast. I have John Hill, who's Director of Sales and Marketing for Renaissance Waverly. And John Hill, please come up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. On behalf of Marriott International, as well as the Renaissance Waverly, I want to thank you all for being here. It's a thrill to be involved with this organization for the second year in a row. Also, I wanted to make sure you all know the raffle is back there, which benefits Covenant House, and there really are a lot of great, yeah, see the raffle lady there? Nice job. There's some really great prizes. There's everything from a brunch to 4 at the Ritz-Carlton downtown to a weekend stay at the St. Regis to Savannah has offered a round of golf for 2 and parking and breakfast for 2 and accommodations, all that kind of stuff. So please take advantage of that. It's my understanding as a sponsor I get to do a little commercial. So I'll do an elevator speech on the Renaissance Waverly. We have 522 guest rooms here as well as 65,000 square feet of space. We could do 24 simultaneous breakouts, and we also have 4 ballrooms ranging from 3,800 square feet clear up to our grand ballroom, which is 16,200 square feet. And a huge attraction of this hotel is not only do we have all this space, but we connect directly to the Cobb Galleria Center, which is right down the hallway here, which offers an additional 320,000 square feet of exhibit space as well as meeting space. When you combine these two complexes together, we have over 385,000 square feet of space, and we're the only hotel in the city of Atlanta that connects directly to a major convention center, so we're very blessed by that. And of course, you're all aware too that right across the street is SunTrust Park as well as the Battery, which joined us about 3 years ago, and there's a pedestrian bridge that connects us all together. So that is a wonderful thing too. And if you don't have anything to do tonight, the Cubs are playing the Braves at 7:20. So Next on the agenda, Cobb Galleria Center, as well as Cobb Tour and Travel, the Waverly and the Sheraton Suites joined together to put together a little video. It's fresh off the press. I haven't even seen it yet myself, but we're going to show you that, and it kind of gives you a glimpse of what's all available in this Galleria area. Thank you very much.
The Cobb Galleria is a great location from a hotel standpoint, amenities. It offers absolutely everything a meeting planner would need. It's just overall the best facility that Atlanta has to offer. Meet me in Cobb.
Meet me in Cobb.
Meet me in Cobb.
Meet me in Cobb.
Meet us in Cobb. Meet me in Cobb.
Meet me in Cobb.
Encuéntrame en Cobb.
Meet me in Cobb.
Hi, I'm Dale Murphy. Meet me in Cobb.
That's actually my first time seeing that as well. Very nice. I like that. Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, we're very proud to have one of our supplier sponsors, Kevin Udell, who's Director of Sales for the Jekyll Island Authority, and he is here to provide you details about his coastal gym.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Make sure I can get this clicker going here. Our first little fun show. Well, first, a raise of hands. Who has not been on Jekyll Island in, let's say, the last 4 years? I have $5 here for an incentive to get you down there. So much has happened. I mean, really, it goes back about 10 years. For those that remember the old Jekyll Island, it still actually looks pretty similar, but $350 million has been invested in the island between new hotels. We're the only oceanfront convention center in the southeast. We have about 78,000 square feet. So any group out there that has about up to 2,000, a little more than 2,000, we'd love to have you down. And I know we have some of our clients here right now. Several new hotels, our new beach village, shopping, dining, just really a complete redo of the island and a reset. And that was just a long, arduous task. I've been here 16 years with the island, so I remember the old Jekyll. It was a little different, a little tougher to sell. But they've done a wonderful job, and some of the best parts is that of all that money spent and all the new development, not 1 acre has been developed that wasn't already developed. And in fact, 3 acres have been brought back to natural setting. So we're very cognizant of keeping Jekyll, the Jekyll you love, still looking very much like the Jekyll when you were a kid or you had your family vacation there and, long ago. So that's sort of the magic of Jekyll. And here's just one of our little fun shots sitting up there at Driftwood Beach. If everybody's been there, that was just voted again one of the best beaches in the country. Our convention center, for those that have been there, thank you so much. For those that haven't, would love to have you come on down. Again, we're right on the ocean. We're the only one in the southeast right directly on the ocean like that. And we have our little, we got our video here. Here it is.
Year after year, they have returned here. They migrate to their favorite hidden spots. It's a journey that started centuries ago. But no matter how much they explore, there are always more surprises to discover. Each generation sharing their discoveries with the next. Find your way back, Jekyll Island.
that kind of fun? That's why I have marketing people and I don't do any of that work. Here it is. So opening in just a couple months is the new Home 2 suite, and that finishes our Beach Village construction. So we have about 350 brand new hotel rooms right out the back door of the convention center. And that's June or July, depending on who you talk to, I think. And it's about 107 rooms. So we have the Westin out the back door and the Ocean Club and such. So it's a nice little option for the groups to be able to walk out the back door and just enjoy the beach village and the hotels. And the big thing we're pushing now, and actually I'm sure most of you know Maria Weiss, she's my incredible, perfect Atlanta salesperson, and she kept pushing me, we have to do all this custom experience stuff, we have to do all the amenities and really pushing that stuff. And so we have an amenity book now, and we have so many things on the island, the Turtle Center, the Dolphin Tours. Mr. Hooks, our executive director, he just put a thing on my desk the other day. He says, Kevin, we got to do pub crawls. Like, that's the new thing. So we have a trolley, and we'll do pub crawls. I mean, we don't think of Jekyll that way, maybe, but it's, you know, so we have a bunch of activities for the attendees to enjoy, scavenger hunts on the beach. You know, we set up beach runs for several of our big groups, and they'll do a 5K, 10K run on the beach and at no cost. And we'll bring over live animals from our Turtle Center, you know, in some of the cocktail parties. Here's some of the photos of the things. So it's a big extra push in that direction of new things for the folks that have come for several years. We wanted to offer something new. And then this, we're so proud of this. We just got ranked, and we had no idea. Money Magazine ranked us the best place to go in 2019. So that was, of all the places, and they had all these algorithms and stuff, Jekyll Island became the #1 place. We feel that way about meetings too, of course. There's so many, and I've said this before, you know, Athens is great, Savannah's wonderful, Brasstown Valley, you know, just all around the state. We're so fortunate to have wonderful locations, but we are the only one right on the beach that has all the kind of the beach destinations, so we're very proud of that. And then we were ranked #2 for the best beaches for families and kids, and then #10 overall best beach by TripAdvisor. So there's a lot of great accolades, and again, the island's as beautiful as it was 40 years ago. It's just a little newer stuff to sleep in and stay in and shop and stuff. So we'd love to have you come down. Thank you so much for the time up here, and I will get off the stage. All right.
So yes, and actually, you haven't been down there. It is gorgeous. I was there last year attending a conference, and Jekyll it doesn't look like it did when I was a kid. It looks really wonderful. So we have our sponsors here that we would like to thank for today. This is a collaborative effort between these organizations. So if you're a member of one of these organizations, you probably are. I thank you very much for being here. Next, we have a special thanks also for more behind-the-scenes magic. PSAV, On-Site Services, Cobb Galleria Convention Center, and Cobb Travel and Tourism. Thank you very much. And then the next slide is a appreciation from MPI Georgia annual sponsors. As you can see, Reno Tahoe, Atlanta, CVB, Photosynthesis Studio, and Modern Luxury Weddings. Thank you all very much for being a part of this. This event is live streaming today, thanks to Shepherd AV. Thank you, Stuart Daneman and Kevin Bellinger, for your assistance with this with Shepherd. Wave to everyone because we are live streaming. All right, next, now we're here for the actual program. The facilitator for our meaningful program today is a well-known member and leader in our community, Allison Wagner, CMP, Senior Director, Client Solutions at Omniance. Allison?
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everybody. It's great to see everyone here today celebrating Global Meetings Industry Day. I think this is just such a fun day in our industry for us to all come together and celebrate what we all do really well. I have the privilege today of introducing our speakers. They are going to come and talk to us about a really important issue that affects our industry every day, whether we see it right out in front of us or not. It is happening, and I'm really excited about the fact that this topic is getting more exposure in the meetings industry so that we can all become an active part of helping prevent human trafficking. Our first speaker is Deborah Richardson. Deborah is Executive Director of the International Human Trafficking Institute. She has a 30-year track record in advocacy on women's rights and economic empowerment for disenfranchised persons. In 2001, Deborah convened a group of women who launched Atlanta's movement to address child sex trafficking. Their efforts to create awareness on domestic child sex trafficking, change laws, and raise money to open the first safe house in the eastern United States sparked advocacy efforts that continue today. Deborah is a thought leader who has testified before Congress, worked with more than 30 communities across the U.S. on planning and executing their human trafficking initiatives. She's spoken to numerous groups and written extensively about ending human trafficking. She is also the former Executive Vice President and Interim CEO of the Center for Civil and Human Rights. Please join me in welcoming Deborah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of GMID Day, because the work that you do impacts so many different people, both in times of joy, in times of moving forward the needle towards safe social change. So whenever good things happen, it's because there's a member of your group that's somewhere facilitating the process. It's also an honor for me to be on the stage behind Abby in Covenant House. Back 20 years ago, when policymakers were arguing the point whether or not children who were born in part of the United States could actually be trafficked, Covenant House was doing the work by sheltering them every night. So I look forward to supporting your work in that raffle as well. So you heard my story begin in 2001. I was the Director of Program Development for Fulton County Juvenile Court. My job was to find programs and services for young people who were coming to the court system. And in order to do that, I would sit in a couple times a month and observe the judges' dockets. This particular Monday morning, I was sitting in the back of the courtroom, and a 10-year-old little girl came in. She was handcuffed and shackled at the ankles. She had just spent 3 days in juvenile detention. Her crime was that she was arrested that Friday evening around 11, 12 o'clock in the back seat of a van with a 42-year-old man who had rented her for sex for 2 hours. Because pimping and pandering a child in the state of Georgia was then a misdemeanor, the man was given what was equivalent to a trafficking citation. This 10-year-old little girl was locked up for a curfew violation and for child prostitution. I could not believe that we were actually charging children with prostitution. No child has the cognitive ability to think through and determine that she's going to market herself for sex. So this brought me on this long journey that you heard about from Allison, because I want to be the front end of the work that Covenant House is doing to prevent children from being exploited in the first place. So toward that goal, but last June, along with our partners, the City of Atlanta, the Super Bowl Host Committee, the Atlanta Falcons, we convened about 300 people at Mercedes-Benz Stadium and said, would you join us in a 3-year campaign to address human trafficking in Metro Atlanta? And that is the campaign, the Human Traffic Proof, the ATL. So thank you for being a part of this presentation, because we are asking you if you would become an actionary to help us spread the word and be a part of this critical movement. During the next 15 minutes, you're going to learn about human trafficking, you'll know when to see it and what the signs are, and more importantly, what to do about it. Our goal is to train 50,000 persons to recognize human trafficking. We started this in September. I'm pleased to tell you that as of this point, we've trained over 16,000 people. We trained the 10,000 Atlanta Super Bowl volunteers. We've trained Uber and Lyft drivers. We've trained hotel staff. We've trained employees in many of the companies that you all work with in their meetings. And we believe that more people see it and recognize it, talk about it, then we wipe away this shield of unawareness and all become active in talking about it and ensuring that it doesn't happen. Now, I'm probably one of the oldest ones in this room, but is there anyone other than myself that remembers 8-track tapes? Oh, you're kidding, wow. When I asked that question at Georgia Tech 3 weeks ago, they just looked at me. And the reason we don't have 8-track tapes is because we stopped buying them. And so we're looking at human trafficking from two perspectives. One is closing the front door by working with people who are vulnerable to being trafficked. And Abby and Covenant House talked to you about the myriad ways that bright young people, often through circumstances of not of their own doing, they end up being in a situation where they're trafficked. But trafficking would not exist if there was not a demand. There were not people who are willing to pay for young people being trafficked, like that 10-year-old little girl. So our motto is to shine a light on the buyer, the predator, who is fueling the market demand that fuels the business of a trafficker. The trafficker is the middle person. He or she is recruiting vulnerable young people in order to meet a market demand. So we believe we can address it. Now I want to show this 2-minute video because I want everyone to be kind of on the same page in understanding what human trafficking is.
What is human trafficking? Human trafficking is modern-day slavery. It is the exploitation of a person through force, fraud, or coercion. Human smuggling and human trafficking are different crimes. Human smuggling is the illegal movement of someone across a border. Human trafficking is the illegal exploitation of a person. Human trafficking is about exploitation, not transportation. Human trafficking is a highly profitable crime and a violation of human rights. It occurs in every part of the world, including here in the United States. It happens in our big cities, our suburbs, and even in rural towns. It can happen to anyone. Human trafficking victims can be U.S. citizens or from other countries. Victims can be any age, race, or gender. But one thing they share is that they are vulnerable to being exploited. There are different types of human trafficking, including sex trafficking, forced labor, and domestic servitude. Sex trafficking victims are manipulated or forced against their will to engage in sex acts for money. Sex traffickers might use violence, threats, manipulation, or the promise of love and affection to lure victims. Truck stops, hotel rooms, rest areas, street corners, clubs, private residences. These are just some of the places where victims are forced to sell sex. Any person under the age of 18 involved in a commercial sex act is considered a victim of human trafficking. No exceptions. Forced labor takes on many forms, and it happens here in the US and overseas. Through force, fraud, or coercion, victims are made to work for little or no pay. Very often, these victims are forced to manufacture or grow the products that we use and consume every day. Victims of forced labor could be found in factories, on farms, doing construction work, and more. Victims of domestic servitude are hidden in plain sight, forced to work in homes across the United States. Their traffickers sometimes take their identification papers and travel documents in order to limit their freedom. They are prisoners, working as nannies, maids, or domestic help. Every year in the United States, thousands of human trafficking cases are reported, but many more go unnoticed. That's because human trafficking is a hidden crime. Victims might be afraid to come forward, or we may not recognize the signs, even if it's happening right in front of us. We need to bring this crime out of the shadows. That's why the Department of Homeland Security created the Blue Campaign, to take a stand against modern-day slavery and help combat this heinous crime by raising awareness of human trafficking around the country.
All right, so those are all the ways that persons can be trafficked. And and it is huge. Human trafficking is the second largest illegal activity to take place in this country. There are drugs, human trafficking, and guns. And the reason why human trafficking is so profitable, because unlike drugs, you can sell the product over and over again. So we talk a lot in Atlanta and Georgia about sex trafficking, But actually, more people are trafficked by labor than by sex. And you see here over 80% of people throughout the United States and the world are trafficked by labor. And you will encounter these people in ways you may not even think about. For instance, how many of you've been in a parking lot and a young kid comes up selling candy or magazines? That is a trafficking ring. They recruit primarily young men through social media. Hey, come travel, make a lot of money. And just like with sex traffic victims, they have a quota, they're threatened, they're taken like 15 miles away where they have no idea where they are. And so that is a form of trafficking. So I have some cards for you that will give you the signs of both labor and sex trafficking and what to do about it that we'll pass out. And there are some other industries you'd probably be surprised about. But I want you to look at this film so you can just see how pervasive human trafficking is. So in that video, you saw manufacturing, domestic work, and working in the office, perhaps on the cleaning crew, in a restaurant. All of these places are where people are going about doing their work, and we walk by them and don't even recognize the situations that they are enduring. Do you think that she'll ever make the $45,000 to pay off her sponsor? Exactly. So, nail shops. If you go to a nail shop and it has a jar that says, please tip in cash, it is more likely than not a trafficking ring. The Asian mafia, in order to keep down the low price of manicure pedicures, began to bring in young women from Asia to work in nail shops. And the tip is the only money they make. You swipe your credit card or pay at the register, the owner gets that. But that jar saying, please tip in cash, is definitely a sign that it could be a trafficking ring. If you're someone you know, get your hair braided. There's a ring of traffickers from West Africa who bring in young women who work 12, 14 hours a day in these braid shops, braiding hair. They only get the tips. And then they are strictly beaten for not making their quota every single day. Chocolate, Hershey, Butterfingers, Cargill, all of those chocolate companies use child labor to pick cocoa beans for the dollar chocolate bar that we enjoy.
But what many may not realize when they're getting their chocolate fix this year is just who's behind it. Kids, some as young as 10, are fueling a child labor movement in the cocoa fields of Western Africa. Our Catherine Pope takes us to Ghana with a look at the darker side of chocolate.
Some children who have never tasted chocolate are forced to work on cocoa bean farms in West Africa.
It's very sweet.
Chocolate is made from cocoa beans, which grow in pods on trees.
You have some beans in it, counting about 50 to 60 beans. You can eat it like toffee. But the rare bean, if I bite it, is very bitter.
Cocoa beans are Ghana's biggest cash crop, but it's a bittersweet harvest because of the common use of child labor. This teenager says he's been toiling at this every day since he was 13. BK is just 9 years old. He spends 8 hours a day working the cocoa beans.
So we can talk about sex trafficking and the terrible buyer that's out there, but there are also ways that we or each one of us are complicit in the labor trafficking that occurs. The Western part of the world is responsible for 90% of labor trafficking that happens in the remainder of the world. These are the signs on the card that I'm going to give you that you can pass out. And so I ask you to look at your own consumer habits and educate your families about the products we buy and make conscious decisions that we are not part of the continuous cycle of people being trafficked for labor. There are two tools. One is a site called theslaveryfootprint.org. It's best if you go on it from a laptop than your smartphone. But it's like a game. It's an interactive game. Young people will love it. And it's a picture of the house, and it takes you through each room and asks you how many electronics you own, what personal care items you buy, what type of linen do you have, what type of household products do you have. And at the end of your going through your home, it calculates how many people are enslaved to make those products. I'm fairly aware, and I had 33 people enslaved. My husband, who should be aware, he had 98 people enslaved. So it just shows you how unconsciously we make those decisions that really is causing a lot of pain on the other side. This is an app. It's called the Food Empowerment Project. You can download it on your phone, and when you go into a store, it will tell you whether or not a product that you're about to buy is a fair trade product or if it's made with traffic labor. So between the Food Empowerment Project app and the Slavery Footprint website, there are ways that we can educate ourselves. Okay, sex trafficking. You saw in the video that sex trafficking is the exploitation for fraud, coercion, in exchange for lots of things, including money. Unfortunately, we are finding that more children are being exploited for pornography. It's actually more productive for a pornographer to have a group of young kids that they are keeping sequestered somewhere and forced to make these films. And I will not tell you how horrendous it is, because the younger the child is in that pornographic film, the more that the buyer would pay for it online to view him or her. So, how many of you heard Atlanta has the highest human trafficking issue in the United States, the world, et cetera? We have no way of quantifying that because human trafficking is an illegal activity. But what we do know, the slide you see on the left, is that Atlanta has the highest underground commercial sex activity out of 14 major cities. That includes New York. A trafficker can make up to $33,000 a week trafficking persons for sex. But the real issue is that 12,400 men who are going online browsing and purchasing and ordering a young child like you do a pizza. I promise you, you go on those lines, you can ask hair color, ethnicity, age, bra size, you can be as specific as you want. You swipe your credit card and that child is delivered to you wherever you are. So We will be giving you the same card about sex trafficking that you can take around with you, but this is a short refresher.
Today, if you saw somebody chained to a post, you would do something about it. But in the days of the transatlantic slave trade, it was a normal sight to see. It isn't as clear today of what modern slavery looks like, but by knowing the signs of human trafficking, you can help protect yourself and you can help protect others. Traffickers would often brand their victims with tattoos, using words such as daddy or cash. Trafficking victims may show sudden changes of dress and behavior. They may suddenly have possessions that they usually can't afford. They may have unusually long work hours. Victims may have new relationships with boyfriends or girlfriends that are noticeably older, and I'm not talking about a few years. Difficulty with making eye contact, especially with men. Victims may have untreated medical problems, such as cuts, bruises, burns, broken bones. They may miss school frequently, make frequent trips. Victims may be unable to speak independently. Other people may insist on answering questions for them, or even translating for them. Victims may even be frightened of authorities, seeing them as the bad guys.
Okay, so those are the signs that most likely will tell you that a person has been trafficked, and they will be on the card that you're going to receive, the signs here that are listed. Now I want to change the conversation about sex trafficking, because again, we talk a lot about the trafficker, whereas we know that it is the buyers that's driving the market, and it's the buyers who are least targeted by law enforcement. This is a film that really opened my eyes to just how insidious this whole issue is around buyer demand.
We have an individual who's pled guilty now, and he's looking at a 15-year mandatory minimum. And I've heard from several people who said that's way too long for someone trying to, just trying to buy sex with a child. Well, with Mr. Gravens during his online chats, he said, I see you have a 12-year-old. I really want a 10-year-old, but I'll take the 12-year-old if I don't have to use condoms and I can take pictures. Before people judge and say, you're being harsh on these guys, you should see what we see.
I was just sick, but it told me this. We have to dig in and fight.
I really believe that most buyers felt like they weren't going to get caught, and I think also that if they did get caught, nothing was going to happen to them.
Shared Hope conducted a study in 2014 of buyers, and we found that 26% of the buyers of commercial sex with kids did not spend a day in jail. We've got a serious problem of tolerance.
My own ignorance was my biggest barrier. And it wasn't until I became a member of the Governor's Council, it wasn't until I went to the Shared Hope Conference that I understood that even in our own community, we probably have a problem.
Juvenile sex trafficking is recruiting, enticing, harboring, transporting, obtaining, maintaining a minor for commercial sex. Some states are now starting to include purchasing and soliciting. That's to clarify that buyers are part of the crime of sex trafficking.
We think that there are two types of buyers who end up in situations where they're caught for trying to buy a minor. One, we think, is they just want to buy sex and they don't care if she's 17 or she's 18. And then there are people who are specifically looking for a minor.
We're getting buyers that are doctors, attorneys, from law enforcement, people that make a substantial amount of money, to the guy that just came off the construction site.
My experience was that it was the stereotype that we always hear about, that they have families, that they have careers.
So we've had a physician, we've had an air traffic controller.
Older, younger, married, not married.
The age range of our offenders went from age 17 up to around 60, almost 70 years old.
The only really consistent trend we've seen is that they're males.
A disturbing trend that we found was that the younger the victim, the more money that was offered to have sex with that child.
Some of the buyer cases we've done, we absolutely have found evidence. They've brought tape, guns, zip ties, things along those lines.
There were several times that I was raped in a car and shoved out of a car.
They feel much more comfortable shopping on the internet. They can do it from their workplace, they can do it from their home. There's a large number of men out there that are looking for these girls, knowing that they can abuse them, rob them, rape them, and they're going to get away with it, and they're going to go on to their next victim.
This is why I was so glad that there were so many men in this room, because we really need male engagement in this conversation. This is not a conversation. When I go and talk to a group of young men, they think they're talking to their grandmother. But we need to have men such as yourselves, who are the leaders of our community, to talk about shifting the culture. We have lots of laws already on the books that identify penalties for people who buy sex, but they're not being enforced because we have a culture of compliance. So by talking about it more, by talking about the way we want to change that culture, we eventually will get to where we want and need to be, and that is where not even one person in this world is exploited for sexual or labor trafficking. So I hope that you will join me in this effort. I would be happy to connect with you, to come to any meeting that you have, your church groups, your synagogues. Our whole goal is to get the word out and to build this army. I've had a lot of people say, you can't really end human trafficking, but I was raised in Atlanta and I was born and grew up during the American Civil Rights Movement. I saw where we ended legal segregation in this country. We can end human trafficking. Thank you very much for having me here.
Deborah, thank you so much. That was just really great information. So we've got one more speaker, and I want to welcome Molly Johnson, CMP. Molly has been in the meetings industry for over 25 years, working in many areas of hotels for both independent properties and the Hilton brand. Since 2015, Molly has been Director of Convention Sales for the Wilmington, North Carolina Convention and Visitors Bureau, primarily developing the growing Convention River District. Molly is a past president of the MPI Carolinas chapter and has served on multiple MPI committees and task forces on the international level, currently serving on the Chapter and Membership Advisory Council, and she has been a trained facilitator in the MPI program since 2017. She is currently she has also served on the Event Industry Council Item Review Panel for several years, developing questions found on the current CMP exam. Thank you for some of those tricky questions that are on that exam. She is also currently serving on the PCMA Advisory Task Force. In the Wilmington community, Molly is a board member for A Safe Place, a local nonprofit assisting victims of human trafficking. For the last 6 years, she has worked as a victim advocate, facilitated hotel awareness training, and conducted fundraising. The organization has grown to include an outreach center, an emergency shelter, and a transitional home. Join me in welcoming Molly.
Thank you. Happy GMID. What a great industry that we are a part of. And unfortunately, human trafficking is part of it too. So I got involved, I'm sure like most of you, I had no idea that it was even happening. You think human trafficking, that's international, it doesn't happen in our backyard, but it does. And little old Wilmington, North Carolina is no stranger to it either. When I found out, I was led to the organization that I'm part of now, which is called A Safe Place. And unfortunately, North Carolina consistently ranks in the top 10 in the country, just like Georgia does. But Wilmington is #1 in the state of North Carolina, and it has to do with its proximity. But once I found out about that, as a mother of 2 daughters and being part of this industry, I immediately dove in. I thought, well, what can I do? Because I don't want this to be attached to our industry, #1, and I certainly don't want it to happen to either of my daughters. And so some of my stuff does cross over with what Deborah talked about. So knowing that I stand between you and the bar, I'm not going to go through every one of my slides. Like Deborah said, human trafficking is the second most profitable industry. You can use a victim over and over and over and over. So that's why it continues to happen. And I'm so thankful that you're going after the real problem. What happens is these girls are, for the longest time, they were being arrested, but they're not the problem. They're trafficked in. So in North Carolina, we started the Safe Harbor Act several years back, which was going after the pimps. Okay, that was fine, but until we get rid of the demand, it's not going to solve anything. So the Southeast U.S. is where 25% of the trafficking victims end up here. And what I'm talking about is domestic. I'm not talking about any international. That is happening. But what we deal with at a safe place, we're dealing with domestic. These girls are right in our own backyard. And these are girls that we're working with. Unfortunately, we haven't grown large enough yet to help the boys that are victims as well. They're there, and we hope to eventually grow to be able to help the boy victims. So one thing that's really important to know, and I am guilty of this myself, we see a girl that's dressed in a certain way, and we automatically think, oh, she looks like a prostitute. Well, you know what? She is. But she did not choose that lifestyle. Most of the victims that we work with are now in their 20s that have come to a safe place, but they were trafficked in at 14, 15 years old. I don't know anyone when I was a kid growing up that said, when I grow up, I want to be a prostitute. These girls are trafficked in. Fast forward, they're 25 years old. They have no education, they have no work history, and they most likely have a criminal history too. Who's going to hire them? So if you say that they choose to be a prostitute, well, if you have no other options, it's not a choice. So what we do at a safe place is we try to help these girls get rid of their criminal record if they have one. There's certain steps that they have to go through, but we also line them up with different opportunities to get a job. Most of the girls they have ambition too, just like anyone else. So if they need to get their GED, we help them get that, go to the community college. We have so many partners in our community that are helping get these girls back on track, and that's what's most important. But just know, if you see a girl that's dressed a certain way, typically with an older man, they probably need some help. So there are resources, and one of the blue campaign that Deborah showed you at the end, there's tons of resources there to help. But what we do, and we go into different hotels and train in depth the housekeeping staff what to look there for, the front desk staff what to look for. And is anyone here from the Georgian Terrace? So Chesapeake Hospitality runs the Georgian Terrace, and we actually did a webinar for all of their HR directors, and they implemented hotel training, which was great. The victims, how they're marketed. Has everyone heard of Backpage? So Backpage was a big place where they were marketing these victims, and about a year and a half, 2 years ago, Backpage was taken down, and everyone thought, oh, this is a great victory, Backpage is gone. Well, you know what? We knew that we could find people there, and now they've created eBackpage, so it's very similar, but they put these ads out, and we have one staff member at a safe place that actually combs all these sites and looks for girls. We had a mom come in a few years back who her 16-year-old daughter was missing, and she was afraid that she may have been picked up by traffickers, and sure enough, after 2 days of combing the different sites, we found the hotel, and I've got another tip for you too, but we identified the hotel that this girl her pictures were in, and we were able to get the mom and her daughter back together. But they typically will take pictures in a hotel, market them on these different sites. So it's really important to know where to find them. Fortunately, we've been able to narrow it down to a handful. We go on these sites, we actually send ads or messages to the girls to let them know that there are resources for them. And it does typically take 8 times for a girl to get away from her pimp before she's ready to do that. They are so afraid to testify. That's another reason why a lot of these cases go unknown, because they're just afraid. Exploiters, they're anybody in the community. We've had cases where it was a mother selling her own daughter, grandmothers. It's people that know and are able to gain the trust of these young girls. And again, I'm talking about girls because that's my experience. But they know them, so they're able to exploit these children because they have their trust. Hotels and motels. Now, a lot of people that set up shop in a motel, they do typically hit the ones that have the outdoor corridors because they can come and go without a front desk person seeing them. It's harder when you're walking past a desk to get away with it. But the hotels, even the 5-star hotels, those are typically when you're seeing the girls coming to the hotel. So your front desk staff, once they're trained, if they see this happening, they'll typically see if you have a guest in house, they're not going to just have one girl come. You're going to see traffic coming in and out. So once they're able to identify that this is a problem, there's numbers that they can call that are non-emergency numbers, and this information is tracked. It's always good too to snap a picture of a girl if you think that she is a prostitute who's being trafficked. A lot of times, like I said, it's not just teenagers. These girls, unfortunately, this is their only way to make money, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually making any money. It's still going back to their pimp. So indicators, kind of went through all that with the videos. Again, there are resources that you can get on the Department of Homeland Security that has all of this. One thing that's really important, if you see something that's happening, don't get involved. If you are part of a hotel, I highly recommend that you have a plan in place, have training, and have your, whoever your manager on duty is, be your go-to. So if you have a housekeeper that thinks something's happening, or your front desk, whoever you designate is your manager on duty, they're the ones that need to call law enforcement, and you can't call too many times. If you think someone's life is in danger, call. They want to know that, and especially if they're tracking someone that may be from Virginia that's now down here in Atlanta, it's important to have all that information on record. If you're a meeting planner, it's important when you're sending out your RFP, ask the hotel, do they have anything in place for human trafficking victims? And if you do actually see a girl in trouble, definitely call 911. Traffic Cam, does anyone have this app? So this is awesome. This is, as much as we travel, you can download this, go in your hotel room, you can take up to 4 pictures of your room, and it's downloaded, it's put into a database, and it's another way to, once you see these girls on these sites, the computer matches it up and they can identify the different hotels. Again, unfortunately, we're not staying in the seedy ones where a lot of them are found, but it is definitely a good database to have. So again, Department of Homeland Security, they have all kinds of resources that you can get from them, different indicator cards that are specific to the different departments. A Safe Place has virtually the same thing that they have on there, and we give these to our hotels. They are designed so that they can be folded up, put on a housekeeping cart, or put behind the front desk. You can call the toll-free number and report your tips. Again, they're keeping track of all this information. There's different videos that are available, but I'm sure you have organizations here in Atlanta that will be happy to come to your hotel and give in-person training to your different staff members. And most importantly, thank you. And just having that awareness out there is what we need. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, thank you all very much for your time, your attention today. This kind of wraps it up. We'll begin our reception networking. I do have a couple of quick items to housekeeping. Anyone who's looking for clock hours, we are a CMP preferred provider, and this session has been submitted and will be approved post-event, and check your ECI profile in a few weeks for credit for this event. We have a community service project going on at the Cobb Galleria Center. It's on the exact same level as where we are right now. It's just through the Garden Court. And if the Cobb Galleria staff, Marion, Welsh, Katie, London, Scott, Walter, these people waving their hands. If you all, we've got 80 outreach kits for Covenant House that needs to be made, so we need your help doing that. Please do that. Please remember the raffle back here in the back, and I think that is it. So thank you all very much for being here. We greatly appreciate it. Enjoy networking. Enjoy making the kits at the Cobb Galleria Center. And these folks from Cobb Galleria Center will be happy to walk you just right across the garden court into the center, and then you can just certainly find your way back. We have a picture. We're going to try to do a group picture about 5:45. And at 6 o'clock, we're going to do the raffle drawings. Thank you. Thank you.